Budget committee at 5:30 p.m. Roll call. We have me, Mr. Berger, Mr. Putnam, Mr. Cronin, Ms. Rinaldi, Ms. Jimmels, Mr. Lafreniere, Mr. Kaminsky.
Lebomsky.
Oh, my God. Mrs. Ferguson. Oh, my God. That was horrible. That was not.
Just move on.
That was-
God, that's not what I meant at all.
Uh.
Where did that come from? And all
Edit
others.
the minutes.
Motion to approve the agenda,
So moved. Second.
who's second? All in favor?
Aye.
We forgot, we need to add approval of the minutes. So the motion to add number 4 and then approval of the minutes.
Sure, I'll motion to approve,
Amend.
amend the agenda to include approving the minutes from last meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we'll approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any public participation? No. No, so we don't have to read it. Discussion next steps. We'll move on to monthly financials. Okay, so do you wanna do this before the financials? Okay. Donna did send me the questions that we asked at last meeting, sent the answers, but only sent it to me, and I didn't realize it didn't go to the whole committee. So here are the answers.
My apologies.
So does anyone have any further questions?
The last column, is that just to be, that's the difference that we expected based on the change
Yes,
that you noted?
yes, that was, where the budget was either over or under,
What are we looking at?
mostly under.
This little,
There you go.
little addendum.
Piece of paper you don't have.
Yes.
Everybody else have it?
Does anybody need one? I can, down there.
Just share.
Yeah, no, I meant down there. Does anybody need one down?
No, we all got it.
Okay.
Here's an extra one. I have 2.
Sure.
We may need the RFP.
If you have a question?
I know, this was the explanation from last month's questions. I'll wait for
Okay,
this month's financials to ask this month's questions.
okay. Anyone else have questions? So then going forward, if there's any questions that need to be brought back to us, do you want them like a week or 2 after, or do you want them brought the next meeting?
I mean, I
We have
think
to
it's,
give enough time for Donna to get the answers.
oh, yeah, I don't know what the committee thinks, but I think if we got them a week or 2 later after the meeting, that's fine, just to have them and be able to look at them prior to the night of the meeting would be helpful to me, but I don't know what the overall feeling is.
Glenn,
I'm
how
just
do you
one
feel?
person.
I missed the question. I'm sorry.
For any questions going forward?
Yeah.
Any questions from tonight that Donna has to research? Do you want them a couple weeks after the meeting? Or do you want to wait until the next meeting and get the answer?
I think before the next meeting would be fine. When we got to review all the documents anyway, might as well review the answers to the questions.
So have them in the packet.
Again, if answers to those questions are appropriate to be in the packet. As long as there's nothing that's, in contractual agreements that should be spoken about in executive
Yeah,
session,
Of course, of course.
we have need to be selective about what is actually answered.
And I mean, if this get emailed to you a couple weeks, but somewhere in between,
Sure.
and then we were able to see it, then it's whatever you think. It's nice to have it prior to the meeting, but
So is a week out sufficient?
If that's enough time to get the answers or do. you want-
No, I mean a
Absolutely.
week before the next meeting, like if.
But for me, that would be for
Sure. I think it's great to have them ahead of time, but Donna, don't kill yourself trying to get them. If you get them and you have them, then
Right.
sure,
Yeah.
send them, but don't Don't go crazy.
These were reasonable, they were easy to research, so honestly, I could probably turn it around within a week.
Yeah.
And so, and this, I have to say.
I was gonna have done this day.
Wait, I did go home that night, no, I'm just kidding. But there's links in this too, so I will send you the live document because I'm referencing some things just as backup, so we'll get
That's
Thing
good.
is that the
Okay.
questions were asked in public session, so the answers should probably be answered in public unless they can't be.
Sure, I mean, if we get the answers ahead of time to see it, doesn't mean it can't go in the packet still, right? So that it becomes a public document, obviously leaving out whatever would require
Sure,
executive
I could do
session.
that.
Make sense?
Sure. I do have one question.
Sure.
On your link here, policy on contracts and informing board, see page 1 link below. The link says city charger capital. Is that what we're supposed to be looking at for that?
Yeah, so we wanted to see what the charter was as far as acquiring contracts. I think it came up when we were discussing it, like what's the threshold and does the superintendent have?
Well, I think we have
The
Board of Ed,
language
we have Board of
center.
Ed policy that govern those decisions. I don't think it would be city charter.
Well, I think we have to go by the city charter.
I think the city charter.
Super.
It takes, right, yeah, it takes the Board of Ed,
Okay, so
Policy.
is this a policy question then? Shouldn't our policy?
but they're the, I believe they're the same,
They are, like ours says, we pretty much reference the city charter.
Right.
In our, oh, gotcha.
yeah.
Although,
The city policy would prevail only when we have an exact opposite to it. Otherwise, we can have our own policy.
Correct. That's how I understand that, Mr. Kisco outlined it. I mean, we're not bound by following city charter.
No, but our policy on this is the same as the city charter
currently,
currently.
I've never seen the city charter, so I couldn't.
page 1,
Nor did I.
Sabrina.
You gotta click on my link.
I don't have the attachment.
No, I know, I'll be sending it to me, but yes, it is, it's quite long and I will, send it out electronically.
Thank you, Tyler.
So could we pose a question to policy? To confirm that they are cohesive, if there needs to be some cohesiveness? And there's no discrepancies or contradictions between the two?
So is the
From being
question,
on the policy committee for ever,
is it a general question? So are you talking generally speaking about policy in general, or are you speaking about a specific?
If we're saying that we need to follow the city charter and we're assuming that they're both the same, I think it would be in our benefit to make sure that they are the same and there's no major conflicts where we're saying one thing and the charter saying the opposite.
I think this
But are
just
you-
pertains to the threshold.
You're
Okay,
specifically
have to
talking
go out
about
to
the
the-
contract that for contracts, right?
Right.
The one in policy 3,000, in series 3,000, right? The business one. That's the
I'm
one
not sure.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
the purchasing
The
contracts,
purchase,
not,
right? Yeah.
not salaries, not those contracts. the
No.
Purchasing contracts, right.
Yeah.
One time that we ended up not doing.
Yeah.
The one-
I understand it the way John outlined it too, that if there's a conflict, that the city charter sort of
Prevails.
reigns supreme,
Prevails,
right?
right.
Yeah. Yeah,
So we have to follow the city. Well,
Right.
it's believes we have to follow the city charter in supersession of our own anyways.
but yes, we can, we'll look into it for policy.
no, we have to get in a bind because we followed our own policy and then, oops. Yeah.
Okay with this? We move on. Some financials. Donna,
Yes, so everybody received the packet
Mhm.
electronically. And, you want to just go through it? Does anybody have any questions?
I guess I always have questions, but do you, maybe it's easier. Do you have anything that you want to point out to us? Maybe it's easier if you go through, if you have some things you wanted to share, maybe that answers my questions and saves the whole.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. The only thing that was glaring a little bit is on, let's see. The packet. Page 2, let me just see what page it is. in this packet. Okay, so in your packet, page 7, electricity. We're over there. And we did a deep dive and we did put aside some money for electricity for the new building, but we only put aside 25,000. And we currently have a bill of 100,000 from Eversource. So that is why that is reflective of that 80,000. So that was one of the items.
Question.
Mhm.
Well, until that building's turned over, why are we consuming any cost for anything? Shouldn't that be under the building committee
They
purview?
reimburse us.
They reimburse us for the gas, I know that, but the electricity, I don't believe they're reimbursing us on.
Have a meeting tomorrow night?
So that I'll have to look into further.
And how much is the exposure of this?
80,000.
80. Call it 100 really, right? Because we're gonna open until next Wednesday, right?
Yeah, it's bills for December. I'm still gonna have January to
So
pump in there.
somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 grand.
Yeah, I do know we get reimbursed for the gas. But I wasn't instructed to get reimbursed for the electricity. And
Yeah.
I did reach out to the building committee and they said that we do not get reimbursed for that.
That's. Yeah. Thank you for reaching out. Maybe I'll ask a question because
Okay,
it would seem like if you're reimbursing for some utilities that are in regards to a new building being opened, why would you only pay some utilities and not others? It's a wider, broader question, I'm sure, as we all smile.
gotcha.
This is along the same lines as why is the fiber
Yes,
not being
that's-
plugged in?
Sorry, Rachel and I both smiled.
Right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's really it. There was one other, the retiree insurance, number 5280. So in your packet.
What's
That
the
was,
account number?
that was over.
Yeah. It's always over. Self-corrects itself.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So page 6. We're over there and that is because it wasn't budgeted correctly.
The retirement contributions or the retiree insurance.
The retiree insurance
Okay.
should have been budgeted at 400,000. So that's why that is, over. Yep, over 70,000.
So it's at the bottom of page 205 or page 9 of 13 of the packet.
Or 6. So
270.
6 if we're,
That account I asked that question quite frequently in
Yeah.
the past. As the group
Now
member
we're
remembers.
looking in the
The
breakdown.
explanation we were previously given was that self-levels itself because it's the retiree insurance.
And
They pay in and then it's offsetting to 5280. So is that the case or is there something different going on that you're now, we'll say, sorting out?
you are correct that the retirees do pay into it, but I still think even with their payment in, we're still gonna be over a little.
Okay.
So, but I'll try to get a better figure. See where we're gonna land.
I used to ask this question every year because it was alarming to see it like
Yeah.
$85,000 over.
I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's,
Yeah.
I think that was pretty much it that jumped out.
Do we have more retirees this year?
Well, we are still exponentially increasing our number of retirees that are on our insurance because of our wonderful retirement incentive. So I think, as our number of people that are taking advantage of that incentive grows, then our need to budget appropriately in that line item grows. I mean, we're getting a lot of return on that investment, but we have to plan
Right,
appropriately.
right, yeah, yeah. Well, that's great though. that
Yeah.
more,
Yeah, I think
people still have some time.
we have the normal retirees that we would get every year that, retire and they're on our insurance and they pay us. But then we have these retirees and I think we're up to 40 this year.
Wow.
Between the paras and the
Wonderful.
teachers, we're up to like 40 people in that group that are like on year 1, 2, or 3 that are subbing every day and they're a large chunk of our pool and very much appreciated, I think, at the schools. So
Right, yeah.
that's a great explanation.
Yeah.
Thank you. That fills in the gap why we'll have a shortage. Because
Mhm.
there are people who are not paying in because they're paying in time rather than, got it. Thank you.
So that was my only things
Anyone
that
else have
popped
any
out.
questions?
I have just one, on page 11 of 13. The
I have like,
It's for,
tuition detention center, is that,
oh, yeah.
is that,
it's 55.
it says,
Pages.
What line number?
okay, so, 4 or 5, 50.
Oh, no, you're right.
55.
11, 13.
Yep.
Okay.
Is that 1,108% over?
What line are you looking at?
Tuition detention center.
5563.01. Is that
Yeah.
a typo or is that
No.
really?
No, I do not believe that is a typo. I believe that that is impacted because of a student
Okay,
situation.
okay,
It wasn't foreseen or budgeted for.
okay.
It is.
And I think it was over last year, if I recall.
That was the only one that I have.
You have any on?
Same questions.
Okay, I have a couple of it's for Jeff.
Yeah, go ahead.
Substitute the 5120 category. I know we've had, I saw you had mentioned it earlier for the adjustment of 1,100, but the substitute salaries and substitute clerical are trending in a heavily over direction. We've had a lot less, I mean, at least on the HR report, we had a lot less absences, which ties into long-term subs as well, getting pretty close to budget. We've had a lot less absences overall this year, at least as of the last full board report. What do we attribute the over budget in the substitutes to?
Probably just, people are out a little bit more, even though it sounds like some of them are head down. And,
Yeah.
just, I would have to, defer to Kim a little bit on this one because, as far as the budget goes, we could look at a 6-year trend for that and see if we could budget more appropriately for next year, but
I was
as
just,
far as the influx, I
We've
would
had a
say.
really tough 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
but Donna and I have also been working on trying to clean up. Where some of the subs that we have are dropping into which lines.
gotcha.
So if you look at that substitute salaries and then there's the long-term certified substitute salaries, like. Some things we have to clean up. So we're gonna figure out the pluses and the minuses. So
Is that
that
a
line might
different-
be over, but there's another one that might be under and so that's, it's a question of where people are hitting in the budget lines and we're working on really trying to clean it up. So
Okay.
next year, everybody's gonna be going exactly where they should be going. But you might have a substitute that's working as a daily sub and then tomorrow they're in as a long-term sub and they're still hitting a different line. So things just aren't moving necessarily as a well-oiled machine and all of that, and we're working on fixing it.
Where do the subs that we get from the new company? Where do
But that's under third party. If you go to the, it says, substitute services, it's a different line. Where is it?
Page 10.
5341.
Oh, it's a different page. That's why I didn't see it.
Substitute services, it says TE services, that's teacher services.
Mhm.
And then,
Do you have an account?
Yeah,
5341.
Okay. So I see. So you're saying that between 5341 and the 50,
Not only
120
5141,
series.
but also 5123. So 5123 is where the long-term certified subs are dropping.
okay,
And then 5120 is where substitute salaries are dropping, and we're working on actually cleaning up so the substitute salaries, remind me if we figured out that was all para subs. So that line is our para retiree subs, the ones that are coming in and working that are the retirees.
Mhm.
And I don't because that's all the para subs. And again, we have more of the retiree para subs. I don't think we planned appropriately for that because normally most of the para subs were coming out of the third party service.
but it looks like overall, if we take subs as an overall, we are within budget.
Exactly.
That
That's
was,
what I'm saying. I think when you look at it as a
Right.
totality, we're still within. It's just some things are kind of floating around between different places.
thank you. I didn't
So,
compare to 5341, so
but
thank
no,
you.
Donna and Steve and I spent like a whole day in her office looking at every single human being that was our employee and which budget line they were dropping to and making sure that we're going to clean it up for next year. So,
So I only have, I think, two more. Any idea on the outstanding sewer dispute? I saw the sewer line. I asked just because it's the sewer number is always, and I'm not sure. It was a pretty good amount we were looking for credit from them on. I wasn't sure if we heard back from them or if they told us to pound sand.
Well, I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. And thank you for breaking out all of the 5210 line items. I saw that was new with the HRA and all those things.
Nice.
And lastly is the 5611 THS project expenses. Is that also a reimbursable account or what are we accounting for and what's going into 5611? It was a new line item.
Oh, okay, I believe we talked about the expenses. That could be the line, I don't know if that's the line where the 250 is supposed to go. I'll get back to you on that one too, because I do know that we had that 250,000 that the board approved for the expenses. But
So that just might be in that 250 might be in another line item, needs to be reallocated.
yeah,
Okay.
I'll get back to you on that one as well.
And my last one is, does student transport include sped transport as well?
Yes, it does.
So that would explain probably where the overage comes from.
We had 3 students with high needs
Okay,
in that area. Yep.
thank you, Don. That's all I've got.
Anyone else?
I had a question that I noticed in minutes from another meeting from another organization about the end of the 2024. The city council was wondering about, they did an FOI for our end of the 24 numbers. And they hadn't gotten it or something. So the December 17th meeting, there was discussion. And I'm just wondering if that's, where was it? Said, where did I have it? Oh, the comptroller talked about, nope, that's not, I just had it. Where'd it go? Oh, the Board of Education report. Someone asked if the board has received the Board of Education's final 2024 numbers. Mayor Cabone said it was an FOI request they did not respond to. So a hearing is coming up.
We have definitely responded. What I
Oh,
can
okay.
say to you is that Michael and his legal team have been working with the city's legal team and it's
Got it. Thank you. That's just, it's not something that I had heard amongst our budget meetings, so that's why I just wanted to, okay.
Moving along, budget timeline. In the packet.
The last page of the packet.
Oh, got it.
So I just updated it. I reflected that we did the Zoom meeting, and for facilities and technologies, and basically everything else kind of rolls out the same. I didn't know if anybody had any questions or ideas. So January 31st, the board would receive the preliminary budget for FY 26.
Via email. Via email. Thank you.
So on the 31st, the superintendent will individually send the recommended budget.
And he did that last year,
Mhm.
right? He wants to follow the same procedure, if that's okay.
Yes, then review and questions. How is that gonna work?
On February 12th, present the superintendent's budget to the BOE at the regular board meeting.
So you have 2 weeks to review it before he presents it.
Right, but it says review and questions.
Last year, board members were encouraged to send questions, correct?
If I remember correctly, yeah, we would email the questions and then there was a running document with answers as we went along. So it's for their review and questions, which we would then send, and then they would probably get answered, I'm assuming, on the 12th of February and the 12th of
March.
March.
Correct.
Yeah, I believe last year we got responses to them.
Pretty
And
quickly.
Yeah, I think that was, they sent them, and within a week we had,
Mhm.
once that deadline
Right,
came.
in that,
That, it was a running document of all the questions that, and then the answers. I
so
remember
that
that.
everyone could see
Yeah,
each other's
Right.
questions.
Yes,
sir.
Yeah.
I
So
guess,
he's
So
gonna
the
present it
question
on the
would be-
12th of February to the full board.
Mhm.
And then March 12th, regular budget committee meeting. So there's really no, I think to Ellen's point, there's no review just by committee.
yes.
well, it's not really,
Regular.
it's not really written that, it's not written that way, I guess. It's written that it's a presentation, I
Oh,
guess.
budget, I'm sorry. Budget, regular budget committee meeting. Yeah, that's fine.
So I assume that meeting will be allowed to ask additional questions and have a dialogue about them. I think it was good to have the budget ahead of time, and I, as usual, ask a bunch of questions and you get an answer, but sometimes it's harder if you can't have a dialogue about something to understand, what when somebody, so this is the reason for the change, that usually elicits a follow-up question, at least in my case.
What I remember from last year is that it was received, we emailed the questions, we got answers back, but those questions were part of his presentation at that first meeting. So he would respond to those questions on February 12th. We would be able to then have dialogue, I'm assuming, with him at that point, and then continue based on any conversations that we've had on March 12th.
And then the 19th, we're having one public meeting.
That's what we did last, yeah.
Mhm.
And it wasn't even just, it was, I think it was just coffee and budget. We didn't have a formal sit down. It was just, we were all there and answering questions as if the public came in.
Yeah, there was no.
It wasn't an official meeting.
Right. Do you think you need a meeting afterwards?
Chair.
Yeah, I mean,
I
Because
think,
questions might come up from the public.
I think
You
we
would-
did have a short meeting after the public coffee. We were sat there for
Mhm.
2 hours and waited with nobody there.
Exactly, there were three people.
3 people, and then we had a very short meeting afterwards to clean up anything that came from the 12th.
I was
And from that
vocal, I
meeting.
was a vocal, if I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah, so could it be like we used to have the public meetings? And if they wanted to ask a question, we still had our budget meeting?
I-
And it's like a combination, instead of waiting around 2 hours, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it became a work, in the past, it was like a working meeting, like somebody
Right.
could come in and ask a question, and we I wasn't on the board at the time, but in the crowd, it was kind of open-ended. If you had a question and it wasn't unreasonable, we'll say the microphone would kind of land on the stage and you could ask a question, and maybe it could be answered, maybe it required further research, but it gave the board could continue to have a productive session of discussing the changes. Maybe there's a change to how we're delivering education, we're changing the type of staff, and the board weighs in on what they feel the direction should be, type of a thing. So maybe that could be a working meeting that the public is invited to ask questions, and there are multiple points in it where the public can ask any question they want.
So it's the format, right? You like to tweak the format slightly, and are you looking for the March 19th date to be adjusted?
Yes. Does that make sense?
Is that, if that's what you, right?
Yeah, I mean, so it's
Yeah.
it's a productive meeting, and we're not just,
Yeah, last year was kind of a.
So I think that, I know that Michael's intent of like the coffee and kind of format was to try to draw people.
Mhm.
It didn't really draw people, but I think it was just to make it more engaging and have people feel that
that's formal.
it was less formal, because some people feel not as comfortable in a more official
Mhm.
setting. So he was trying to,
But we could still have the coffee,
Maybe just not as long.
right?
okay, and then following that reception type area, you want to do like an actual sit down and have an official meeting.
Or have it at the same time, no?
Okay, all right.
I think that makes it the more formal, which is
Okay.
what Mr. Wilson is trying to, it's based on what I'm hearing Sue say is.
Previously, we had was a public budget workshop. People could come. It was still an open and closed meeting. The agenda item was public discussion and
Right.
ask any questions you wanted. And you still called it a public budget workshop on the,
Right.
maybe that's the,
Mhm.
that way you don't have to sit for an hour with nobody
The year
coming.
before we had nobody. Yeah, so the open-ended, we got three people as opposed to nobody from the previous.
So if there's no,
Big percentage.
Yeah.
The optimist.
if there's a hot button topic, then people come.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
So
as
they're-
in the past, right? Like
Correct.
if athletics or music or something is on the.
Yes, or sports. But there really hasn't been in the past few years, so I just. And I just want to make it more,
And well, here's a question, if you have some, and like Kim's just saying, is the redistricting going to have an effect on the budget? Could that be the hot button topic that brings people out? Is that, I'm just wondering, that's a good point, Kim. So I think having that less, I don't know,
and I think that would come out in the budget meetings on February and March 12th. And that might draw people on the 19th.
Yeah, I get the impression you're just trying to accomplish so that we don't have a 2-hour wait for the public. Or legally obligated not to start a meeting until after they're done if nobody shows up. I get that's where you're
That's
trying to go,
that's
right?
what I'm trying to get to.
It's a matter of how you write the agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, can certainly be modified to accommodate what you're asking for.
and if a bunch of people show up, nobody's gonna stop. I mean, that's great. The more people, the better.
right,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Bring 50. I mean,
So if we
Just leave
can
your violins home.
word it.
Remember that?
Yes, I do. Okay,
Okay.
any other questions on the calendar? Budget calendar? No? Okay, moving right along. Propane RFP. Which was handed out this evening.
So everybody has a copy of the proposed RFP to go out to bid. The contract was actually up December 31st, but we had an extension for 2 months. Thank goodness. Hopon really worked with us and they were able to actually hold their price, which was phenomenal. This contract was up in the middle of the year. My proposal in the RFP is to do pretty much a 5.5-year contract so that we're aligned with our fiscal year and we don't find ourselves in the middle of the winter looking for propane. So that's the only thing that really is different from the original proposal that we did, the RFP a few years ago, is, just kind of stretching out the contract. And we do have some other competitors in the area, so it could be a good competition.
So does this need to be voted on at the full board?
That was my question. I don't know what you historically have done with the RFPs, if the full board votes on it.
We recommend it to the full board and then it goes
Okay.
out. So that will give them 3 weeks.
Yeah,
And is that enough time?
Yeah. that would be fine, because they only has to be posted for like 5 days, and
Okay,
there's a brand.
and this is just for the buses, right?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah,
bus.
this is auto.
bus. Okay,
so, I have a question.
Sure.
What's the length of the contract with All-Star?
All-Star, I think we have them for another 3 years.
So I guess my concern or thought here would be that we should try and align the propane contract's end date, its initial term end date, somewhere in the neighborhood of the All-Star contract. Not because anybody's unhappy, but technology continues to march along. So whether we're propane buses or it's a hybrid fleet or, we don't. And if All-Star sells to somebody, there's so many variables that you don't want to get stuck with 5.5 years of propane. I would think
Sure.
it might make sense to align it with our
Absolutely.
All-Star contract.
No, that's a great idea. Yeah, so that's a great idea. And then the only thing that I would do is just make sure it aligns with our fiscal year.
Oh,
So
yeah.
whatever.
I think the All-Star one does anyways, right? I mean, it
Oh, yeah,
must.
no, every other contract
Yeah.
does. So mostly. So yeah, that sounds good. I could update this and look at the All-Star
Yeah, I
contract.
mean, if everybody else agrees. I'm-
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
So, not to make this political, but we're asking for a firm fixed price for 3 or 5 years.
Yes.
All of us are hoping that fuel costs are gonna come down with the new administration, hopefully. So if we lock in at $5 a gallon now and production ramps up and then cost comes down to $3 a gallon, we're kind of screwing ourselves.
Right, right.
It's just my opinion, thinking out loud. I'm not
No, that's a good
trying to
point.
have a crystal ball, but
Is there any,
Oil, we
Does-
lock in.
Yep, it's a very good point. It's a risk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
I like it's very optimistic that you think it's gonna go down.
is there can you put in a clause that if it reduces by a certain percentage, then the new price goes in?
contract.
That's not really.
Right,
a fixed
so-
rate
I think
contract.
you're-
No, I know it's not.
So I have seen this actually in another contract, not for fuel, but it's a rate cap over wholesale. So we agree to X amount of time at X number of dollars per gallon or whatever it may be. And then there's if it's a long-term contract, not to exceed X amount of dollars over current wholesale average for the year. So if we say it's $5 and the price plummets to $2, and let's say I'm making these numbers up, it's
Yeah.
$1 over per gallon, our cap in any given year is the average of wholesale plus $1. So they still get their margin. And when they give us a price, you're gonna see what it is over wholesale. You can kind of play it. I say play the game, but there may be a way to protect us from that. Maybe not, but it's an idea.
Sure, so I could look into it and get a draft and maybe update the current RFP.
What's the value of, is that in one of these line items somewhere?
Yes, it's underneath by natural gas, I believe.
I didn't realize we paid for the propane for the buses.
Yeah, we do.
Wow.
But they
Bus
store.
contract, and we gotta pay for the gas.
Yeah, so we
It's,
usually get about 200,000 gallons, I know that.
Plus fuel,
56,2002.
3620.
It's
not
$300,000.
12 of 13.
Thank you.
So you said it was 200,000 gallons, Donna?
Yep.
So that's in the neighborhood of $1.50 a gallon.
Yeah, we're locked in right now at 135. I think it's like 140 last year.
And to Glenn's point, that would explain why the propane company is willing to extend the contract at the generous same rate. They're anticipating the same thing probably.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a business decision on their part. I'm not saying it isn't, but it does explain why the number can stay the same.
Just like the snow guys, they gamble it. Hey, maybe that may last snow.
Yeah, at $1.50 a gallon, even a 20% reduction in cost of propane isn't an enormous dollar amount.
True.
So the
Two
group,
hundred forty, so 250,000, how many gallons?
200,000.
so must be a little over. So
Yeah, it's not a huge.
It's
huge
not.
exposure. I didn't
So
realize.
if we align it with the All-Star
It's not like
contract
it's diesel, I guess, right?
yeah, well, I was saying you said $5.
So
I
then
thought,
just
oh, this
bring
could be
that
huge.
with those changes to
and bring
the
those
board.
changes to the
Okay.
full board.
Yeah, and I'll look into the cap.
Yeah, you may not
Okay.
even need to do that, Donna, now that we know that it's $1.35.
Yeah, you know,
Okay,
It's not gonna
they
cut,
cut it in half, it's 50 cents.
I don't think it's probably
Right.
gonna cut in half.
it's interesting you should say that because I'm investigating getting 50 cents back per gallon from the federal government. Because there is a credit out there, but I didn't want to say it until I got the actual facts, but there might be, hopefully, a couple towns do this and they get a credit. 50 cents per gallon on their propane for, energy efficient fuel. So hopefully I'll have good news there. And we'll-
Okay, so because government policy makes the price of propane so high, the government then has to turn around and subsidize public entities that use it. Yeah,
They're encouraging efficient fuel usage, I think. is-
Mexico does the same thing with the price of grain, for instance, but that's, that's another story.
Okay, consensus is then you'll redo with the time period being the same as All-Star,
Sure.
and we'll send it to the full board with that changes, and the full board will discuss.
Sounds good.
Okay? So we all in favor of bringing that to the full board?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Now a nice little topic. Whole new buildings and budgetary impact. So I wanted to sign here because there's a lot of um, unknowns. And I know the superintendent's working on the budget and what's going on, but we don't know much. Like with the electricity. That we are responsible for paying for, that we didn't realize we were responsible for paying for, so that would affect this budget. What else could happen if when they're tearing down the old building, any expenses or whatever? Do we have any accounting for it within this budget, or how is that being?
I
You
don't
don't
think,
have to answer
Can
now.
can I interject? It's
Sure.
Sue. I'm not on video, sorry. Everybody here is sick, so I'm kind of
Oh, sorry.
not, not looking my best, so I'm just on, speaker. But Ellen, anything that comes from tearing down the building or anything like that comes from the building project budget and contingency. That's not on us.
But if it goes over,
that's not,
It's still not on us.
okay,
It's on them.
okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
I thought what you were referring to were things like overtime for custodians.
That too.
I mean, there's gonna be some of that, right? I mean, we've got some of our technicians that are gonna be working over the weekend to make sure that everything's up and running and that sort of thing. So there's gonna be OT. But but what Sue just said, we're not responsible for
that.
part of
Okay.
things.
that we're aware of. Sometimes it seems like some things are just sneaking up on us and we're getting slapped with bills out of the blue, like for your
That's true.
instance, the whole fiber thing, that got
Yeah.
slapped out of the blue.
But we're pushing back on those, Glenn, as building committee costs. That it's part of the building, like you said, and that and the sewage. You can't get a CO without that being in place. So how does that come on the board? And Michael's having conversations with Ed and Mario about that constantly. They're in constant conversations with all of that.
Well, it's good to know.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think what Glenn is worried about is the unknown unknowns, right?
Right.
I mean, there are known unknowns and we're ready for those, but what
Right.
are the unknown?
Yeah, you
And
make
you
a
don't
good
know
point.
until-
There's, overtime,
Don't know.
labor, staffing.
Right, I mean, the things that you would expect, right? But yes, I mean, as far as the unknowns. I mean, we're gonna get blindsided by those too,
Mhm.
right? So. But as Sue just said, we're pushing back on some of the ridiculousness of that.
Mr. Ukulito had responded about the electricity. And he made reference to that there's supposed to be reimbursement from Eversource. But supposedly it was going to capital from the city to capital improvements for us,
Yes, that's correct, Glenn.
but that's yet to be finalized. That's just
We
people
actually.
talking at this point.
We actually, and it would probably, and not probably, it would be brought to the full board meeting because it affects the full board. But we did sign a memorandum of understanding with the city that the reimbursement that comes back from Eversource will go to the Board of Education's capital fund.
In which we have very little in there, and
We had none. We got nothing
Yeah.
this year. We got zero. So I think it's, Donna, is the number 34,000
Yeah, well, you got a good memory.
coming
Yes,
back?
$34,417.
Yeah, so that'll
Yeah.
go right to our capital.
that's it.
Yep.
Well, no, the overall number that apparently we're gonna get reimbursed is 774,000. And of that, the 34,417 was going to be paid for. Is the way I believe it reads. So then the
Yes.
balance would go to the capital reserve.
Right. So the 770 or whatever that number was, is going to be reimbursed by Eversource.
Yep.
That won't come out of our pocket.
Yes.
And then 34 of that
Will come to
Go.
the Board of Education. It's
will go
capital
to the
fund.
city, and the remainder would be in the capital reserve.
well, the 34,000 goes to the city, just like our ECS checks, everything goes through them.
Right.
They will,
Yep.
we've requested that that money be transferred to our capital fund. In writing,
The remainder,
signed, sealed and delivered, yes. Yes.
okay,
See if
Yep.
Torrington receives that for the sewer connection.
yes.
Right, so the $34,000 goes to the city for the sewer connection.
Yeah,
Is that the sewer?
That's what it says in the
Oh,
MO.
okay, right, not the electric.
Yeah. Yep.
But we
And
have, there's a, what's the credit for the electric? From Eversource? Donna, do you have anything on that?
The
I'm sorry to
credit-
put you on the spot. I thought
No,
there
that's
was-
okay. That's okay. I mean, I know we've been billing them for the electricity, for the gas.
Okay,
Not the electricity. No, you're right.
the Eversource refund is the $774.
Right. So according to the MOU, it looks like the Eversource refund is the 774.
okay, all right, that, yeah, I thought it was Eversource and not the septic, the sewage. The sewage is what we're not paying anything towards that hookup in the end. That's what we're pushing back on, Glenn,
Okay.
because it's that and the fiber. As we've discussed quite a few times, that's gonna have to come up at the end. Because again, it's we can't have the building without any of that.
On this electricity is a little alarming to me. We're already $82,000 over budget. And if you average our yearly at 950,000, 75,000 a month, it's another 450,000 till the end of the year just for electricity. So we're almost doubling our electricity budget.
Well, do we think that's gonna go down when the school closes?
Yeah,
Right,
you're running power around the clock. All the lights in the building run 24/7.
And then the new building will be shut off, or the old building will be shut off.
Well, I'm just going by what our budget for last year,
Right,
which was a reduction from the year before. We reduced our budget $50,000 from the year prior.
because of the closing of the high school was why we agreed to reduce it. So,
Okay.
I guess if we looked at what we paid Eversource for the high school from January to June, we could come up with an idea as to what our savings may be till the end of the year.
We have to account for as well, the middle school section of the building will continue to have its lights on 24/7 because that's that safety requirement for an open construction site. That's where a lot of I suspect a lot of our high school, there was the dehumidifiers that had to run. There were a bunch of things that had to run to keep the building within
24/7, yeah.
for building. So I think we're gonna see some dip in that electricity bill, but we will still see, that's just moving, across the.
It is, but it's moving it, but it's also, keep in mind, the energy efficiency of that building. The lights dim during the day and at night when nobody's there, there's certain, they're set up to be effective and more efficient.
No, absolutely. So
Right,
in the
right.
25-26 budget year, I would 100% agree. I just think at the moment it's a very big unknown to Glenn's point, and he's right.
I don't think it's that big of an unknown. If we look at what we paid last year, we could at least come up with a somewhat close idea as to what we paid at THS last year. Let's look at that number.
I could get that.
Okay.
Yeah, someplace to start for sure.
So I'll get that for the next
Mhm.
meeting to send out, or before the next meeting. Send it.
Yeah. If you can.
Yeah.
Never ending.
I got it. Yeah, hopefully it'll be a wash.
Yeah. So we don't know what we don't know, so it's just continuing anything that arises. Anything else
That
on that subject?
of impact of buildings
Yep.
next year. I'll ask for the budgeting process, and you may not know the answer to this now. How are we building a budget for 25-26 currently with the unknown of what the layout of the district will be in 25-26? So are we building that using existing numbers? Are we building that with, we're just trying to understand as the budget committee, we have to look at,
Sure.
how do we
Yeah.
be responsible fiscally for what happens next year? It's hard I think it may be hard to do in these meetings unless there's a plan or we have something coming that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think at this point, it's the existing structure, because 70% of our budget is staff. And that, regardless of buildings and all, we're, obviously gonna need the same amount of staff. So I would say that that would be one of the factors weighing into the budget. But as far as you're talking about, like if schools are changing and
Sure, there was early on in an ad hoc committee, there was discussions of additional programs and more in different ways of delivering and bringing things in-house, and there'd be staff changes involved in those. So is the budget that we're going to receive based on what we know in 24-25 moving forward, or are we basing it loosely on what we're anticipating
basing.
changing to, even though we haven't seen what that will look like yet?
no, I understand now, sorry. Yeah, so there will be some of that in there that for future projects, or like you said, some alternative ideas, for the buildings. But mostly
That-
it's gonna be based on this year's structure.
Okay.
That's gonna be discussed in our January meeting. I don't know if
Yeah,
you recall in
okay.
November, we said
Yeah.
in January, central office was going to present their findings and recommendations, formalize the recommendations that they presented to us last year. And
Right.
I would think my expectation is that our budget will be in line, our budget presentation will be in line with what those recommendations are.
That's correct. That's correct. There's a plan that Michael plans to share this month, as Sue said. And then the budget
Okay.
is, as Donna
Based.
said, is based on that recommendation.
Okay,
Yes.
So you will be assuming board acceptance of the recommendation.
Well, we accepted it in theory a year ago.
Yeah, and at a November meeting,
It was already
it
presented.
was presented and
A year and a half ago, actually.
Hmm.
I want to say, yeah, we had charged them over a year ago. I can ask Marissa to pull up the meeting if you guys want to watch it to refresh your memories. Marissa, can you look into that for me, please? And
I
send
believe-
out
I think
link.
it was in November of
2023.
2023, correct.
Yes.
I don't remember which meeting it was, but, well, it was probably a budget meeting.
And we committed to a concept which we are now building into which administration is now building into a recommendation for redistricting and.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay, so we approved a concept, but we haven't had the chance to approve
Correct.
what that turns. Okay, no, as long as that's what we're saying.
well,
that's
right,
fine.
there's an understanding, the superintendent understands that this still has to meet board
Okay.
approval, yes.
Okay, because that will have the budgetary implications that Jeff is talking about.
Yeah.
It's the specifics that'll make it a budget.
The expectation is there will be budget savings or at a minimum, even across the board. But I am concerned that there's no recollection of that meeting. So I would, Marissa, if you could look in November of 2023 and just find that for us so we can all get kind of back on the same page.
I remember that, yeah. There was the talk of what buildings were closing, what we were gonna do with the building that we're closing, and yeah, there was very specific on.
Right, and
It
then we
was-
formed a huge committee which was supposed to look at that.
But
That's-
John, and the reason, and I don't want to get into why we disassembled it, but we had the staff, we were paying central office staff to do a job. And that's part of their job, is to come up with recommendations like that. So that's what they've done, and that's what they're presenting to us.
Jason you first.
And so I guess, and I'm recalling everything that you're saying, and I hear what you're saying is that when we did this redistricting the last time, there was a lot of public input that went into after the proposal. But if we're getting a presentation on the 29th of the redistricting, I'm assuming that there's going to be a line item on that night to approve that redistricting, which would then be in line with the release of the budget that is based on that approval on the 31st.
I would agree with you, Jason.
Yes.
I mean, that makes makes sense to me, but I'm perplexed on the hesitation and the kind of the vibe I'm getting from the room on any proposals coming our way? Is it because we weren't involved in the entire process and we're asking our central office team to put it together? Where's the concern?
I'll take that one. So
Great.
we had the ad hoc committee for that period of time, and there were different proposals for what to do with the various buildings and what kind of staffing it might take. And a dialogue began about what the costs would be and where people would go and what we would be offsetting and what.
I understand, right. I was there. So then what? We
Well, so-
disassembled it.
None of those proposals would have resulted in a net zero or a net decrease in the budget
Right,
where
because
John's
that's,
going.
which, again, once central office started to look at the numbers and saw that it could result in a net zero, we said, well, why wouldn't we just do this work ourselves instead of involving 80 people? Let's put the faith in the people that we hired to do the job and see where we go, where we get with that. And I've said this before, the last time we had to redistrict, there was no superintendent in place. We didn't have a choice. This time we had choices, and I think we made a good choice.
Except at some point, it has to be turned over to the people who were elected to do the job.
Which is going to happen in January, John.
Right, but we've been told that what we're hearing in January is some plan that we have already
We
tacitly
did.
approved.
Which we did.
Maybe I misunderstand.
Which we did, in theory, approve in a meeting in that very room a year and a half ago. Which again, if there's a problem with it, we need to address it now. So let's take a look at the meeting, refresh our memories, and then if we need to reconvene before the 29th, we need to reconvene.
Sue,
But I
I think
don't-
that reconvening, I think that getting the proposal is the first step, of course, in understanding what everybody's planning to do and what it's going to look like. I don't think anybody here disagrees that getting that. I think the concern would be that getting all of that information in one night and then having no time to reflect on it as a board before saying,
We
We
don't have
agree
to
to go.
vote on it. We do not have to vote on it on the 29th. It doesn't have, we can take some time to look at it, consider it, have a special meeting to vote on it at that point, just like we've done with other things that we want to talk about and think about.
yeah, I think that's the logical approach to it, of course, to have some time to.
But I am
Okay.
asking that we have some faith in the people that we've hired and put in these positions to do their job. Let's let them do it and see where we land.
Well, that's what the proposal is, right? They're doing that now and they'll bring it to us on the 29th and we'll get to see it. So I think that's what's happening now. Anybody else?
And just the budget that's being presented, I'm assuming, is going to reflect what was presented a year and a half ago. And if the board's decision is to not accept that proposal, then we're gonna have to redo budget, and that's just the nature of, I think that just needs to be put out there, is that
Correct.
that
That's
work's
the nature
be-
of the issue.
that work's gonna have to be redone to accommodate what the board's decision is based on the proposal that was given out a year and a half ago.
That's right. And on the 31st, when the budget is presented, I mean, it's presented as the superintendent's proposed budget. It's certainly not, set in stone. It's a proposal. With certainly room for,
Yeah,
based on questions, discussion, as it always is. Yes.
yeah. Marissa, we'll wait and see what comes back and we'll figure it all out.
Anyone else? Hearing nothing. Topics for future meetings, well, the monthly financials. Timeline. Let's continue discussion and budget for next year. Comments for the good of the order, Jen?
I recommend this article from today's Republican as a cautionary tale about what budget committees need to do. It's about the problems in Litchfield with the combined districts and the almost $1 million initial deficit. Because they weren't paying attention is what it comes down to. Read it. And I will leave this, give this to anyone who wants it, but it's in the Republican today.
Lisa?
Great meeting. I hope the transition this weekend or next Wednesday goes well with the new high school.
Yeah, I'm excited for a new start for the high school and an end to an era of the old building. So it'd be nice to see some sort of coverage of the students leaving on Friday. I think that would be kind of cool, is some sort of coverage of the students leaving the building for the last time. I think that would be something that should be memorialized.
Yes.
Yeah, put it that way.
Yeah, memorialize the leaving and then the memorialization of them entering on the first day on Wednesday. I think that would be a cool thing. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Looking forward to everything that's coming along. And for those that are sleeves rolled up, deep in the trenches, I hope everything goes as well as it can for them.
Thank you. And yeah, shout out to my team for all that. They're gonna be working hard this weekend, making sure all the classrooms are ready and everybody can jump in for next week, so.
Yeah, it's exciting, the opening of the building, great meeting, and kudos to Rachel's team and Dean's team and everybody that's just rolling their sleeves up. It's exciting.
Joanne, could you
Awesome.
jump in? Oh,
Well,
sorry, I couldn't even
that's okay.
see you being there.
So much has gone into this transition. I am confident that it will go well. There's so much excitement. Thanks to everybody.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. It's very exciting. We're all super pumped and thank you to all of you for your support. It's great.
And students are pumped.
Last week's open house / parents nights were extraordinarily, positive. People were just kind of, I think, stunned. I mean, I had one young lady, a high school student, come up to me and just say, I'm gonna really like getting out of bed in the morning and now I'm coming to school every day. Like, she had tears in her eyes. She said, this is magnificent. I feel like, and she's a senior, and she said, I feel like I've already arrived on a college campus. It's so beautiful.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you had a large turnout?
Yes, it was very well
Wonderful,
attended. People were
wonderful.
just, yeah. We had some students, even though it was by grade level, right? Every grade was assigned an evening. We had kids come back all 3 nights, kids that were there on Monday for the first night. We're so happy to just be in the space. Because Michael and I were there for all 3 nights and, I was like, weren't you here last night? They just wanted to be in the space because it's just so beautiful.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's great. Great meeting, exciting times for Torrington, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. So, and thank you, everybody, for all your hard work to getting us to this point. It's monumental.
Cool. Good meeting. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for their efforts, and the new building opening up is probably the most exciting thing that's happened in the area in a long time. So
Yeah.
great for the hard work, and good luck to your team this weekend, Rachel. You have
Thank you.
a long hill to climb.
Yeah, great job. I know you're ready.
Public apology, Mrs. Ferguson. Oh.
Quite all right.
Yes, thank everyone for the hard work and motion to adjourn at 6:34.
So moved.
Glenn,
Second.
Jeff, all in favor?
Excellent.
We are adjourned.